Okay, so I think we are live. I'm checking in. Let's see if it shows up. I'm waiting for it to show up on my phone so that I know we're actually live. But if you can hear me, let me know. Let's see. Stream one, stream one. There's so many streams, it's kind of confusing, but I think we're good here. Let me just mute this. That should be good. That's all up. Yes, okay. I think that is working. Okay, cool. We're live. We're live for sure. I'm positive. I can see us on my thing. Okay, so we are beginning our mapathon for the weekend, which I am very excited about. Could not come at a better time to just, tunnel down and focus just on my mapping for a weekend, Oh, you can hear me. Oh, great. Hello, Liara. Okay, so a couple of quick just disclaimers before we get started. I have these streams every 3 hours. I make no promises for exactly how long they're going to be. My goal is to aim for around 2 hours. If I'm in, the role, they might be 3 and like completely go back to back. They might be 1 hours if say my wrist is hurting or, I'm getting a migraine or I don't know. There's like little things. My kids are going crazy and destroying the house and my husband needs help. Then I might cut it a little bit short before the next one to give me a break. But we're going to do what we can. We're going to do what we can. We have an exciting weekend. I am going to be starting with my capital city mapping, and we're going to kind of go over my whole process for mapping a capital city or cities in general, some of the resources I'm using. And then this afternoon around, I think it's the 2 p.m. stream, Edgar of Artifexian is going to be joining me to work on what he's working on. And then this afternoon at like 5, the 5 p.m. Eastern time stream, Ross of Ross Bay Geo here on YouTube is going to be joining us, which is going to be a lot of fun. And then I haven't shared this yet, but tomorrow afternoon, one of my writing group friends is going to join me and I'm going to help her make her map. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll get to go through like all of her requirements and what she's looking for and kind of look at some new stuff, and we'll have an absolute blast. Morning from Dallas. Good morning. So if anyone in the, chat right now is working on anything or wants to share what they're doing, definitely let me know. I'm imagining as the weekend goes on, there'll be more people like participating when it's not like super early. Because I know based off where a lot of my viewers are, this is a little bit early for some people to get started, so I'm not expecting too much. But, it'll hopefully be a quiet morning. We can really get going and get everything moving. But let's see. I have all this set up. So can I share this tab real quick? Yeah. Okay. Yay for Europe, though. Yes, it's a good time for Europe. It does work well. That's sort of why I ended up doing it the way I did, where, hopefully it'll all work together well. But let me share my screen here. Okay, I think you can. That works. That's fine. Okay. So I'm not going to have this up the whole time, and at some point I'll post a link to this. These are my very, very, very rough notes. They're nowhere close ready to actually like me making like a video on it or something. But I have my rough notes that I'm going to be using to make my city map that like we'll kind of be walking through together. But basically I have all the things that I want to consider when it comes to creating a city. And we're going to start with like a bit of like, I'm going to like mind map it and talk through it and like work on like, share what I think I need to have in this city. And then I have some steps for the process. And one of the really good resources that I actually found last night, whose channel I love, is, let's see if I can show this to you. Let me just click this link. If you are not familiar with a collection, share this tab instead. There you go. If you are not familiar with this, I guess, blog site, a collection of unmitigated pedantry, it is absolutely delightful. I love it. But something that Brett talks about in here is how cities were laid out, specifically in like more medieval-esque times. And I went through and, this whole thing is fantastic. I made some notes. So some of my process for that, specifically when it comes to like food production and transportation, is mainly coming from this site. So let's go back over here. So I have, those links in here. He has 2 articles on that, which I'm going to share this somewhere. I'm not sure how yet, but I'm going to share this. And then I have some city map examples that I'm going to bring up. I'm going to try not to have anything up that I don't have like the rights to. Like, I think it's fine for this use case, but we're going to try to be careful because I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, so those are my kind of rough notes. And then let's check the chat real quick. Hello from France. I have a map I could share. Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to work on, go for it. I'll obviously be over here. Bonjour. Yes. Okay. Yes. So let us. Do we want to start with the? Let me switch to this. Okay. So let me edit this real quick. Probably should have done this beforehand, but it's fine. Save. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is my Photoshop. And as you can see here, whoa, hold on. I'm all tangled up. I have like so many cables around my desk right now, trying to like hook everything up to the Ethernet, including my tablet, and have everything like stream super efficiently, except now like everything's crazy. Yeah, here we go. So this is the island. And if you're familiar at all with my writing project that I'm working on, this is the same one that I've been conlanging for. This is the same one that a lot of my recent world building videos have been on. But I've essentially been calling it my like potion crafting world or craft potion world. And it's kind of like a witchy, Gothic Victorian-esque kind of feel to it. So I've been wearing my witch hats in my conlanging streams. But this is the island that my society is settled upon. And part of the process in the book, or the plot in the book, is that there's going to be like sort of an invasion. They're going to get occupied, essentially. And there's some like drama with that. So it's going to be centered around and near the capital city of this whole society that lives on this island. And this island is like pretty big. Do I have a full... let me see real quick. Do I have a full map, regional map? Let me see if I can show that to you. Yeah, so this is the start of like a regional topographic map. And you can see this is 10 degrees. So this whole island is probably like, it's probably not quite 10. It's probably closer to like 8 or 7.5 degrees of latitude tall. So, it's not huge, but it's not super duper tiny either. So we have that. Let me close that back up. And the area that I think we're going to focus on is going to be right in here, because I think having this like protected like inlet sort of bay of sorts would probably make a lot of sense strategically, right? Like they'll have the most protected waters for keeping some sort of like, trading fleet, military fleet, or naval fleet, right? So I think this would make sense as like a place of power. And also then it gives them a lot of protected coast where port cities and I guess trading post cities, all of that would be very, very affluent. And so being up in here, they would have easy access and control of all of that, which, they want to be able to control a lot of the money, the imports, all of that kind of stuff. There'd probably be big ports like down here, anywhere in here probably as well. But I think up over here is a little bit more like, it just feels better for me. So that leads us to this map. And this is that little tiny topographic map of the deepest part of that little inlet. So in here is where we're going to place the map, or place the city. And we're not going to do it quite yet. I had originally been thinking it would go like right here, but I'm not sure. So let's open up this layer 1. We're going to just call this like brainstorming. And I'm going to move this here. Actually get my little pen. Let's make sure we're all set to go. Okay. I always do that and make it uneven. But the few of the first things in my brainstorming process, which actually let me find a way to share this Google Doc with you. There we go. All right, so then I just need to pop over to YouTube, and I think I can just put it in the description for you all. I'm just gonna put it in. Ooh, there we go. Sorry. All right, let's. All right, I think you guys can click on that. Let me know if you can't. Is that Photoshop? Yes. I'm still using Photoshop. It is, I've looked into replacements, but right now I just don't have the time or energy to switch. But yes. Okay. Yes, we're doing this in Photoshop. I don't use any of the like fancy Photoshop features. You will notice once we get into actual mapping how horrendous I am at using it. I could probably make my life way easier, but I don't. But that's fine. So, oh good, you can see it. Yes. Yes, you're welcome for the notes. Oh, GIMP. Yeah, you can definitely use GIMP. That's a good cheap alternative. And honestly, all the features I use, GIMP absolutely has. So, you know. Okay, so one of the first things I have to consider in the notes is just basically anything that's important for what you're doing. And this is something that you have to think about based on like what your purpose of making a city or local map is, or what the purpose of your map is in general, right? All the maps that I draw, other than my one for the guide, obviously, is for my writing settings. So I have very specific stories that I want to tell in these settings that I want these settings to serve as well as possible. There's also the approach of like just trying to make it as realistic as possible, or just trying to make the world or the city maps for the purpose of doing that in and of itself, in which case the things you focus on might be a little different. But I think all this stuff is still things to keep in mind. But because this is for my book, I am going to start with noting like anything that's relevant for my world, right? So I'm just going to, oh, wait, hold on. Capital city. So the first thing I have is themes. So any themes that might show up in your world, ways that might show up. So like in my book, the nature versus society is a big part of it. And that kind of reflects a lot of the internal themes of like more of a individual life versus like community. Pretend I can spell. So like that's a big part of it. And then so when I've built my society in and of itself, it's fine. When I've built my individual society, I actually have nature versus society being a really big part of it. So like I have two different goddesses, one that really focuses on society and the connectedness of people, and one of them that really focuses on the balance of people in society with the natural world and the magical world, and like keeping all of that in harmony and balance. So there's a direct pull to that just within the people in the society, which, I have to be thinking about. But that also is going to tie a lot into the capital city, which we'll get into more shortly, but that is going to be relevant to how I map it. Another next thing that I have on this list is changes in society. So anything that is relevant for the setting first. We'll get into like general change later, but if I were to make like a little timeline of sorts, and like here's where we like start the story. Right, this is the map, or the time of the map. There's a lot of things that have happened before that. We obviously start with the city's start, which, typically wouldn't be a city in a lot of cases, but over the course of my book, the things that are relevant is that there was this big event, like, I'd have to look at my actual timeline of how long ago it was, but I want to say it was like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, where basically the magical guardian of their city left. And that changed the whole structure of society. It changed the way they started organizing society because their ruler and the entire foundation of their government was based on the support and decisions of this like magical guardian. So I can basically say that, this is when the guardian left. And that is very relevant for building the city because the way the city was structured before that and the way it was structured after that are going to be very different, right? So like the types of buildings are going to be different. How the power is set up is going to be different. Like there's lots of changes. And then semi-recently we have Magic Returned, which again has had a big impact on the city. Like now there has to be bureaucracy to manage magic. There has to be, magic users. There's an academy. There's a lot of rules and restrictions around the use of magic and who can do it, which will tie into, where those people are going to be allowed to practice or be within the city, right? So that's a factor. Let's see. The next thing I have is relevant factions and organizations. And this is where I just kind of like make a list of like things that I know need to be in the city because they're part of my like story idea, sort of, or like what I know of the capital city already. So I know that we are going to have council led by Dragon King. They're not actually a dragon, that's just it's fine, it doesn't matter for this. But led by a king, which normally used to be chosen by the guardian, but now is chosen by the council, right? So you have this council. It's very similar to like Joseon era kind of bureaucracy and how the government was situated then. So then there's that. There's going to be all the different ministries / branches of government. That's going to be important. I know that there are noble families, so nobles. And I know that the way society is moving is the nobles have a lot more control and power in, the city, right? They're a little bit more independent. It's becoming not quite what you would think of in a, like a feudal society. But there's that sort of extent, right, where the power is getting increasingly decentralized as that supporting power force of the center, which was the support of the like magical guardian, has kind of crumbled. So now the kind of tiers underneath that are kind of gaining in strength and gaining in power, which is sort of decentralizing power a little bit. We'll call them like sub-rulers. And then we'll have to be aware of guards / whatever military there will be. This nation isn't going to be very militaristic because they're pretty isolated, so they're not going to have a ton of ground troops. They're going to have some level of guards. A lot of the guards and military is going to be controlled by the like sub-rulers, but that's still going to be something that's relevant because they're going to get occupied. So how the occupying forces are going to move into the city is going to be relevant of like, well, where are they stationed? What kind of places did the guards have control over before? Like, what is going to be easy ways for them to step in versus like trying to create more of a militaristically controlled area. Do they have a standing army or do they draft when needed? I would anticipate them not to have much of a standing army at all. Like, maybe not at all. I think it would mostly be like guards or like miniature army forces, which would be led by each of the subgroups. And then there would be like one in the capital just to, essentially be the guards of the city. But in a normal war situation, I would think they would draft. But because in this one they end up kind of submitting to the occupation at first, they're not necessarily going to pull a draft. Because they're just going to be like, yeah, sure, if you want to sit here and keep doing your thing, it's fine. But that is a relevant part. I know there's going to be a magical academy of sorts. That's going to be like a setting in my book. One of the characters is from the academy, and is like an academy witch, and they're going to go there at one part in the book, so that's pretty important. And then I also am going to have a temple, and this temple is from before the Guardian left and has basically been on guard, and no one's allowed to enter it since then. And that is the location of the heist. So I know I need to have that, and then I know my main character has a potion shop in the city. So where in the city are there going to be, magical storefronts and such things will be relevant. And then I think the last thing that's relevant, which we sort of already covered with nobles and sub-rulers, is like they're going to visit some of that. So these are all places in the city that I need to, consider and be thinking about where they would go, how that would be organized, how the city's going to be structured. So then the next step on my list is the purpose of the city originally versus now. And this sort of ties into like what is going to be your founding focus of your city, like the oldest parts of it, like the way it was structured first. Because if you have a town that started just as a small village or a small fishing village, you're going to have that, maybe not completely, but like it's going to grow organically from that potentially. And so you want to keep that in mind. If it started as like, a little mining town up in the mountains, or if it started as just like this was a defensible border location for defending the border and it started just like as a fort and then grew from there. It kind of depends. If people settled this region and were like, this is a planned city that's going to be like X, then you know that it's going to be a lot more structured. And also whether it was planned or organically grew is going to be important. And I think keeping in mind how bureaucratic the city was when it was formed is going to be important for that too. Like how much planning is going to go into it. Like, are they going to have like strict grid structures? A lot of societies going pretty far back had, especially ones that were more imperialistic, they would have these city plans for what they believed a proper city would be. And they would go around, not like postage stamping this city around, but like, trying to make it match what their cities look like. Let's see. Do you have any real world architecture influence? So I have maybe like 3 different influences that I'm sort of balancing for the architecture. There's obviously like a Gothic Victorian sort of aesthetic, and that's going to be more in the like detailing and the vibes than like the structure of the architecture itself. And then I'm also leaning a lot into Hanok houses and that style of like mansion pavilions and stuff from early South Korea. So think like Joseon Dynasty era, like that kind of building structure. It fits from a climatic perspective. And also a little bit, I'm looking at some northern Vietnam and various like different Indian kingdoms, like some of their architecture, just due to it having to handle the heat. Like, this is a tropical place, so you're not really going to see actual Victorian type architecture there because it just doesn't make sense for the climate and for the way they would have lived, and it doesn't make sense for how my society is structured either. So it's sort of like a blend of all things. The layout, the having the separate buildings and having that focus on the airflow. I'm pulling a lot from like Joseon era buildings, and a lot of that is just because I watch a lot of like historical Korean TV. Like, that's like one of the things I watch the most. So like I'm very familiar with like how that those layouts are and how that's built. But it's not going to be like the architectural style of that per se. So it's like a mix of all three. That's kind of the vibe I'm going for. But yes. So this city, which I'm not sure exactly how it would have worked, but I imagine it would have initially been maybe when the island was less centralized originally. So like maybe up in here, it would have been some sort of like fort or some sort of like, you have like a manor and then the surrounding serfs. Not obviously like feudal like that, but that sort of idea. So maybe it started as defensible manor plus hamlet or something, whatever. And then from there, as the guardian maybe took as the magical entity took sort of guardianship of the island and sort of united them together, I think they would have then decided that this was the capital city, and they would have like intentionally expanded it. So I think that at that point it would have had intentional development as a city. So it would have been more planned. And so I have some like ideas or some notes on different types of structures that cities were commonly planned at. There's geomorphic, which is basically where they follow the layout of geography. There's less central planning. There's grid planning, which is very common for planned cities, trying to get that structure. There are radial layouts, which are more like they converge on a central point, which could be the capital, the plaza, the market, like whatever basically all of the roads would lead to. And it could also be multi-radial, where we have a bunch of those little like centers. I think for this, I honestly kind of want to do a combination of all three, just because I think it would be fun. So we're going to follow the land to an extent. We'll start with that. And then within that, we'll have some radial points and some grids. And I think that'll give it like kind of a mixed feel, which I think will be good. The next thing on my list is the strategic importance of the city. So obviously here it's a capital city, so it is the center of power. It is going to be the center of bureaucracy, right? So pulling in taxations, having stores of, taxable grains and crops, having a central place for training and teaching and bringing up the bureaucracy. Like, there's definitely going to be a big bureaucratic focus. Center of bureaucracy. A combination of all three could also help differentiate different parts of the city that were built or expanded at different times throughout the city's history. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I would expect the start of it to be a little bit more geomorphic, right? Because that's more organic. Developed places are going to tend to do that more, especially when it's just something small. And then as it becomes planned, or like you build different parts, like, yeah, exactly. I think that'll help a lot. But yeah, center of bureaucracy, and it's also the center of the council / power. Let's see what's next. Defense of the city. So I think how the city is defended. So again, this isn't going to be a super military focused place, right? Like they don't have a lot of external threats. Like the whole island is now united. Obviously, that wouldn't have always been the case. So it's possible that older, defensible manor would maybe have walls, right? But something that you tend to see in cities that have less threat to them, right? Like they feel more secure, they feel more safe. They'll be less likely to keep up with those defenses. So like maybe it started with a wall, and then as the city grew, they didn't bother expanding the wall or something like that. So I think the walls would not fill the whole city. Not whole city. And then the city walls, gates, entrances, we'll have to figure that out, I think, as we start placing it in the land, just because where the gates are is going to make sense based on how they're going to travel in and out. But because it is more bureaucratically focused, I think there will be a lot of like trying to keep track of people and to taxing goods, and all of that kind of stuff is going to be pretty important in the city. So I think maybe that central region is probably going to be the bureaucratic focus, and there'll be a lot of heavily controlled gates, or heavily monitored. Which also means if that's where they're doing a lot of the taxations, that means that the markets would be inside the gates. And it probably means the markets are going to be a big focus of the transportation in and out of the city. That into probably the bureaucratic center where they collect taxes and stuff like that. And you would probably still see smaller like food markets and smaller like hand goods outside of the city walls, like in the residential areas around, just because, you know, that's going to be taxed less if someone's just selling their extra stuff from their garden or like small things. But the big items would be probably in the major markets inside of the city walls. So fortresses, I think you'd have that original defensible manor. And then I know that the temple's going to be relatively defended. So I think it's just going to be like the main buildings that are more fortress-esque. We'll get to that, I think, once we start laying it out. So we have to consider the population size or density, how centralized it is. I think it's going to be, well, the island as a whole is less centralized now. I think this city has a lot of a centralized history, a very more densely populated history. So I think it's going to be like not overcrowded, but populated, fairly well populated. So we'll kind of take that middle ground here. Power players. The next note I have is for power players. So, you know, who are going to be the people with power in your city, and how is the city going to revolve around them to an extent, right? So manor, temple, government building should be defendable. Yeah, to an extent, they definitely will be. It's not going to be as much as some place that like has a history of actually having to defend them, but those buildings to some extent will be defended. There will be walls, and all of that, like an acropolis, perhaps. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So power players. Whoever has power, like you're gonna see an extent of that here in the organization. And I have a quote down here from the Brett's post. And the quote is, and this is the link that I have that I showed a little bit at the beginning from a collection of unmitigated pedantry, I think it's called. But his quote is, "I have framed this as the city serving the economic needs of the countryside, but it is equally valid to see the city as an exploiter of the countryside. And the place and role of almost every kind of population center, city, town, or castle town is dictated by how it relates to the countryside around it. The city is hinterland. So that's something I've been thinking about here, where, you scroll back up, where you sort of are going to have these people that are in power, exerting control over everything. So for here, that's a lot going to be my nobles, the noble families that kind of lead the council and the different bureaucratic sectors of the government. So all of that is going to be very focused. It's going to be very central. They're going to all be near that sort of center of power wherever we locate that. So like center of power, we'll have the rulers plus council. We're going to have bureaucrats. Wow, I can't spell. Bureaucrats, the noble families, because they are going to actively be participating in the government. And then I think that to an extent, the academies are going to be very centralized because they're sort of that pathway into the bureaucracy, right? Like the academies are going to mostly be training people to go into that or going into like being magic users and stuff, which again is heavily controlled. So everything that's heavily controlled, they're going to want closer because it's easier to control it. So that's sort of my center of power. Any other classes or cultural divides that might make districts or zones, etc., in a city? So I think that for the most part, I will have the zone that's sort of for the families, the like noble families, and then you'll have ones that are for like general populations, and then you'll have the one that's more like the magic side of the city. I'm not going to further divide the residential areas because it's just not going to be relevant. They probably would be divided in some way, but for my purposes here, we'll like name them something different, but I'm not going to decide how that division is going to work unless something important occurs to me. So then centers, and these are going to be the different like city centers that we'll build out. And this comes also from Brett's articles, but we'll start with our administrative center, which would have any political and religious authorities. So obviously that'll be my bureaucratic center, but also there'll be smaller administrative centers, probably in the main like temples or churches of the two main religions. Defense or military center, typically near your administrative center to protect it. So there'll probably be some level of like, not prison, but like a holding jail somewhere where they have like they try prisoners. You'll have barracks. You'll have like all that kind of stuff probably near the center, and then also there'll probably be some like little like satellite locations out in the city. Market center, so that's going to be buyers and sellers, and again, the market is going to be like that's where a lot of the taxation is going to come from. That's where a lot of the goods for the people of the city is going to come from. Like that's going to be that big convergence point. Then we'll have our production centers, and these are going to be more small niche construction. So things like general food, general like day-to-day stuff is going to be sold closer to where people are. There's not as much benefit to like having that be brought into this big and internal market. So other production is usually outside the city. So this could be things like blacksmiths, export goods, fine wares, right? Everything that's like smaller scale for the rich, for those in power would be in this area. And then like, your wooden drinking mugs or like other generic things that has to be produced in bulk, typically closer to where the people are, is going to be, again, where the people are, right? And then we have infrastructure centers. So these are going to be our roads, our harbors, ports, etc. So we'll have to define our city center. We'll do that once we start working on the map. And then I just made a big list of like culturally or socially significant buildings. These are mostly just things that are going to be in the city that once we start building it out, we'll decide where they go based off how the society is structured and how they relate to power and the flow of money and the flow of people in the city. So I have things like eating, leisure or entertainment. This could be like, the Roman Colosseum, public baths, sporting facilities. I have medical facilities. I have shops, markets, specialty workshops, that sort of thing. Any guilds and organizations that might be there. Obviously, the government and bureaucrats, classes and homing differences. So that's basically just like, I imagine the houses or land of the different ruling cities is actually almost going to be like little mini towns in and of themselves that are walled off, where it's not like it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like an embassy, right? Where like this is their land that they control, their guards protect it, right? They protect their own little gates into it. A lot of the family, all the people that work for them, would be within this area. So that'll be like a decent little chunk of the city where we'll have those little, like, they might even have their own little mini markets for the people that are serving or part of the family, etc. Because that's going to be a big part of, like, you could probably think of it like clans, right? So you'll have your central core of the family and then the more further out branches of the family that have less power but are still associated with and tied to the family. And those will all be kind of in one area. And then they'll just be like the general civilization people of the city who are not tied to one of those families. And there'll be very different structures and layouts in the city for that. Then religious buildings, any sort of public services, education, so like our academies, schools, stuff like that. Food production, which we'll get into more later, but I got most of this from Brett's articles, which a lot of it is coming from the isolated state model, which is very interesting, but it sort of divides based off how easy it is to bring things to the center of your capital or the center of power where they're going to be taxing it and bringing it together, or the center of the city, and what is going to make the most sense to have close by versus further out, like in these rings. So we are going to follow those rings as we build out our city, which I think will be fun, and we'll go over it more when we get to that point. And then we'll have public places, and this could be like where they have festivals or where they have meetings, like if they were doing like gathering all the people together, anything like that, big parks, anything in that sort of category, and then defense, military, guard. And that's my list right now. If there's anything that you think that I'm missing, let me know, and I can like add it to the notes, add it to my consideration here. But what we are gonna start with, I dropped my pen. Okay. We are gonna start by popping back over here and considering exactly where we want this city to be, and then we're gonna do step 1, which is considering the geology, topography, like rivers, like all of that of where the city's going to be and kind of how it's going to form in there, because I want it to sort of fit the location. So this is our central valley here. And so this major river, which I think you can probably see this mouse better. Yeah. This is going to be our main river of power. I think is a funny way to put it, but like this is going to be the main way that like that goods, people, transportation, everything is going to move up and down in here. And normally, I think that it would have made sense closer to the mouth of the river, like down here, would potentially be your capital city, and they probably will be major cities down here. But due to the slightly more, I don't want to say like internal, but they interact slightly less with outsiders and different countries. So I think their being that, like their power seat being that accessible is slightly less important. So I sort of imagine them being up the river instead. So maybe off of one of these major branches and sitting there, and then having both all of the like goods and communication that comes from the bay up the river reach them, but then also it coming through this little like pass between these 3 bits of mountains where they connect to different parts of the island. Like, I think that would be an important part because it might make the most sense for goods to travel and for that to be a big oh my god, my words today. That'll be an important area for communication, transportation, the movement of goods, etc., and not just traveling all the way around the island, right? So that's kind of what I've been thinking. Will your city's more wealthy parts be higher up in the geography? I think it depends. An epicenter, yeah. So there's a lot of different opinions, but normally I think being higher up tends to be in most cities and most cultures the like wealthier part of it, those with the most power, because your most powerful spot is going to be probably the most defensible, having a view of the city, right? Like all of that would kind of make the most sense. It depends a little bit too on like something that I've been looking at is how in a lot of Eastern cultures, like how they built the cities. So for example, in Joseon era, a lot of the historical Chinese kingdoms and stuff like that, they had a lot of principles that they designed their cities based off that didn't necessarily lead to having the place of rule be in a higher elevation per se. But they had like, I think you had to have like mountains on both sides, or like 2 of the cardinal directions. There needed to be mountains and there needed to be rivers running from a certain direction. And like, they had the whole balance of that basically made it, I don't know, better. I need to do more research into that, but I'm not following that specific methodology, so I didn't look into it too much. But like, there's a lot of stuff like that where there could be culturally significant reasons for where the power is. But I think in this case, like having it be more higher up would probably make sense. Just from a defensibility, being able to see things and control it kind of perspective. So I probably want something that is not as steep. So I'll probably avoid over here because the steepness here probably means these rivers are going to be a little bit, like, especially up in here, they're going to be a lot faster moving because they're dropping down more as they go, right? That gravity will speed up the rivers to an extent. So that's going to be less good for traveling and movement and all of that sort of stuff. So we're probably either looking directly at this pass, or this is kind of where I'd originally been thinking to put it. But honestly, like now I'm kind of thinking maybe like set up here off this pass where anything coming through here has to come through them. They're then further back in the valley. So I'm not quite sure what would be the most optimal here. Also, what altitude would the middle part of the river start, so you're rid of those nasty waterfalls and can actually get there with ships? Right. Yeah. So like anything that's up in this region, these are going to be not super great. But this is going to be a lot better in terms of transporting things up and down the river. So I would think plenty of agricultural area. Very nice isolated flat valley where the second upstream river connects. So here, or you're thinking like up in this region right here? Plenty of agricultural area while also having access to 2 sources of fresh water. Yeah, that could be a good option. At least that's what I did with my own fictional capital city after the old coastal capital was sacked and destroyed. The pass is too easy to attack. Yeah, that's a good point. Pass is where you build your forts, not really your capital. Yeah, I think that's valid. So maybe like up in here, we'll have like, there'll probably be a little bit of a defensible / bureaucratic thing here just for monitoring the movement of goods and everything and defending this valley. But then maybe somewhere down in here, would make the most sense. Because you'll have a lot of agriculture here. Would be good spots for it all in here. And they do, the main agricultural, like, taxable good is going to be rice farming. So having it be very, very, like, terraced up in here and then use the floodplains of the rivers down here is going to be good. I wonder if, like, maybe, like, somewhere in this region might make the most sense. To the west, yeah. Because I don't want it to be too far down. Like, I want it to kind of be behind this line here where you have these ranges. So yeah, let's do it, like, up in here. I think that's good. And I do want there to be some sort of, like, natural, not like they're like, we'll get there. So let me, how do I want to do this? Between where you have the, yeah, like right in here, this sort of region. Yeah, because this is going to be pretty steep. So maybe them nestling with that steepness right behind them, so whether or not that's like here or here for, like, would probably make a lot of sense. Yeah, and there's a lot of water coming in here and then it's going to slow down, so it'd be pretty easy for them to create controlled, you know, irrigation or channels or the locked, I can't remember what they're called, but all that kind of stuff I think would be pretty easy here. So let me, do I want to take a screenshot to copy this over? I'm going to do that just for funsies. I'll take that. You can't see this, but that's okay. Terraces, yeah. Let's see. Potion world mapping. Save. Okay. So I think we can probably go over here. How do I want to... We're going to just start with, like... Let's do another layer. Let's call this layer rough geographic. And this is going to be, like, not part of the actual map. This is going to be, like, where we're going to take notes and stuff and, like, roughly place out what this would look like. So let me move over my, where is it? That little map thing there. Ah, that took over. Yeah. So the way I think we're going to map this, trying to think what scale I want it to be. I think I'll just have maybe that part of that bend there. And then that sort of a deal. Probably should have just made these lines thicker, but that's fine. Yeah, so we'll have something like that. And then I want to have a rough idea of, like, the topography, the elevation, perhaps. So in order to do that, I think what I'm going to do is try and pull up, let me see if there's before I share it. I want to see if there's like a feature in Google Earth where I can just zoom in somewhere and copy the like typographic lines of that. Let's see. Let me... Okay. We're just playing in Google Earth right now. Probably... Let's see. What does this do? This might be better. So there's an island that... This island? Yakushima Island. Not quite. This island. Does anyone know if there's like an easy way to get the elevation lines in Google Earth? Where's my phone? Let me look it up. Let's see. Oh, you have to like download a special thing for it. Yeah, there's no contour lines. So instead, let's switch back over here. Yeah, I already looked through the layers at the bottom. Those didn't have it. Hello, Greg. Welcome. Let's pull up. Let me just see if I can find a random one. Just to get like a good example, because I find it's always easier to look at something real to base it off of. Let's see. It's a good place. Those would be called like relief maps. I wonder if I can just... Blah, 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 blah. Hello, Angel Faye. And select terrain. Topographic lines in Google Earth. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I didn't think... Here, let me show this again. I didn't think there was a way to do it based off going through this. Let's try custom. We don't need... Really don't need clouds. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything here. I'm trying to find a good way to get like contour lines for various places, just to kind of have something to use as a inspiration. But I don't see... I mean, I think the best bet is almost just to try and copy, like make it up based off that. What is that? That's kind of interesting. Look at Milan, Italy. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't really have the lines I'm looking for. Yeah, that doesn't really have it either. Okay, I don't know. That didn't seem to work out for me. I'm gonna go back to pulling something random up on my phone, seeing if I can find it there. Slash, I can always just like make it up as I go. Is this it? This is kind of close-ish. I don't know. We're just gonna make it up. You mean like small houses to put on a map? No, I'm working on the like terrain. Like the altitude of different places, doing contour lines. You have 3 relief lines already in your mini map. That might be a good start to add to manually. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we just have to kind of do it ourselves. So I'm going to do this in a separate layer real quick. We will mark the lines that we have here already. So I think, I'm trying to figure out exactly where we are on here. That's probably here. Like that to an extent. Would be one of them. And let me go over here real quick. Do I have my scale here? I do not. So I can't even remember how many feet up that is. Not that it necessarily matters, but I do know there's a little bit, the shape is probably going to have there being like some sort of move like this, right? That's kind of the shape that we're looking at. Yeah. So this middle part here is going to be the highest up. Because the water has kind of, where can you see this? You see this, mouse? It's kind of hard to see. But the water has been pushed down either side, right? So this middle part is actually going to be higher up compared to the rivers. Maybe not significantly, but a little bit at least. I'm happy my city is as flat as a Dutch pancake. Yeah. Makes things easy. If we have 2 parallel rivers, then there will be a watershed down their center line. Right, yeah. Like, there's gonna be a difference in how the water flows and everything. Yeah, likely the river's eroded parts away. You might even get away with making the dents even deeper. Yeah. Yeah, that would definitely be possible. And I think it also will depend on how much they controlled, because they have been settled here for a long time, so they will probably have made their mark on it to an extent in like dams or how the water flows. Like, they will probably be controlling that a lot. So that's going to be the main rivers. Is there going to be anything else that's super relevant here? There really isn't going to be any big features unless there's certain parts that are going to be like higher up than others. Um, let's say that let's say there's more like a bit of a little ridge here, right? So like this might even be like this, where that's the elevation of over here as well. So like this elevation is the same as this elevation, and there's going to be a little bit of a ridge there, and that would be a good potential center spot. Are there more tributaries? Yeah, there would be smaller rivers for sure going through here, but I think that anything... Well, we can draw a few like initial ones, but they would probably have been like changed or controlled by the city, either into like canals or something like that. What is the distance between the two parallel rivers? That is a good point. Let me see if I can figure that out, because that would be good to know. So I don't have any sort of scale on here. Let's open back up this friend. Okay, so this whole thing is about, we'll say 8 degrees. Let's pop back over, where is it? Should have... this one. So this whole thing is about 8 degrees. Let me mess around with this real quick. Like this whole section here, we'll say is roughly 8 degrees. Then the map that is this one, which starts from that ridge to the bottom there, so that's like right here to that's there, approximately right here, right? So, you know, our that map is about here, which, if this is 8 degrees, excuse my like really rough math. We're really rough mapping this. Yeah, so that's 8 degrees. This is about the center. It's a slightly over a quarter in height for that, which would be slightly over 2 degrees. We'll call it 2.12 degrees in height. And we're doing this all based off height because this is, you know, the same-ish. So 2.12 degrees. So then if we come back over here, this whole thing is 2.12 degrees. Yeah, I know the math. So then the area that we're looking at is approximately, let's look at the shape. Just at the curve there, just the curve there. So here, you're here. So if we look at the side of this, let me turn on rulers. Yeah, rulers are helpful. Oh wait, we can see better if I move this. I'll come back to more of these in a moment. So these lines are approximately, let's see, this one is at, let's see, that's 1600. This is 17. So this is 1650. I'm just doing the pixel ruler count to get a scale here. This line is going to be 1950, almost exactly. So this is approximately 300 pixels. So then 0 to 3500. So 3500 pixels equals 2.12 degrees. So what we're gonna do, what am I gonna use? Yeah, I'll use my phone real quick. Hold on. pull up a calculator. So 2.12 divided by 3,500 equals a really tiny number. And then we're going to times that by 300 equals, where is my, here we go. So this is going to equal 0.181714 degrees ish. Yeah, exactly. So then degree. Yeah, so 1 degree of latitude approximately equals 364,000 feet or 69 miles. We're not branching this into minutes and seconds. Okay, so if 1 degree equals 364,000 feet or 69 miles, so then back to the calculator. So how do I math? Okay. So what we want to do is 364,000. All right, let's start with miles. Let's just see if it's easy enough to do in miles. So 69 miles times 0.181714 equals 12.538266 miles. Ta-da! I think that's right. I see everyone's math things. Yeah, it is pretty close to 1350 miles. Come on, I can see my house from here degrees. Yeah. Okay. So if we go back over here, let me add another layer real quick, which is going to be, we'll call this, we'll just call this the distance layer temp. Okay. So if this entire map is, we can do this by pixels real quick. So view, rulers, we're looking at, how big is this? Whoa, okay, here we go. How big did I make this? It's kind of big. It's, let's see, 4,500. It's at halfway, or is that slightly over halfway? 4754. I think this is 4,800 pixels, and that is going to equal 12.538 miles approximately. So the question then is, how many pixels is a mile? But that's a pretty big area for this map. So 4,800 pixels in miles. 4,800 divided by 12.538 is going to be 382.8 pixels per mile. So that means that if we started it, let's see, well, let's go to exactly 382. So is this going to tell me exactly where my thing is? So that's going to be 100, 200, 300, 82 is going to be like right there. That is 1 mile. So between here, this is basically 900 pixels to right here is going to be 4,200 pixels. 4,200 minus 900 is 3,300 divided by 382.8 pixels. It is 8.62 miles between the rivers. Yeah, time to make a new channel, Madeline James Maths. I am so bad with maths, everybody. Like, just straight up, like, I can do certain types of math. Like, 3D math is great for me. But once you start getting into stuff that, like, I can't, like, visualize or understand the concept of, it's just awful. Awful. So 8.62 miles. Yes. Okay. So that's what we're looking at, which I think is a pretty good city size. So let's look up. Oh, can I see? Oh, So just looking at what some random person said on Reddit, cities and towns of the Middle Ages, which is going to be a little bit more densely populated than that, cover 1 square mile of land per 38,850 people on average, which is a density of about 61 per acre. So the land within the walls of a typical city of 10,000 would be 165 acres. So let's see. Yeah, so I think that we're probably looking at somewhere between 50. So, okay. Population size, right? We're not going to get into this too much because we don't need to get into this too much. But I would imagine somewhere in the 50,000 to 100,000 population range is kind of what I would expect here. So if we're looking at 50 to 100,000 people, we'd be looking, if we use just that random thing of 38,850, 38,850. We'll get through the maths very quickly, I promise. Now my poor little ADHD brain is like, oh, I must look it up now. So unfortunately, you are all stuck with me looking this up. But 38,850 people per square mile times, we're at like 8.62, would be 334,887. So we can very, very easily have a city of the population size that we're thinking within this space. I just wanted to like verify that since we actually looked up the distances. And that also means that the city probably would not spread the entire distance between the two rivers, but I imagine there'll be a little bit of space. So we're not going to be cramped in here essentially. Perhaps 2 old cities at each fort grew into one bigger city in the middle. That's definitely possible. I imagine there would at least be like little villages or something over there that's a little bit more whatever. Okay, let's go back to our plan. Okay, so I think that, see, this is our distance. This is our random topographic lines. That's our rough geographic stuff. Let's do another layer. Let's make it like purple for funsies. So I think that our city center is going to be here, right? Where maybe they have a little bit of a, cliff at their back. And we've talked about having a smaller city walls. But the thing with the city walls is if you're going to pull everyone behind the city, say there's attack or a siege or something, because your city walls are to protect the people, not just in the city, but the people out of it, in theory, you still need a fresh source of water. So what might make the most sense... Let me think about this. We may not want to put it here because they need to be able to have access to fresh water. And there is going to be other like tributary rivers. I think someone talked about this, but like these rivers are our major rivers. So we might want to set something up to where, yeah, they could dig a canal. That would be an option. But in terms of like, a canal would be easy to divert. Not that like any river wouldn't be easy to divert, but like if someone were to take the city, they could just be like, okay, let's block off your canal. And then you don't have any, yeah. So if we were to say, actually in blue, that maybe there's a little bit of a tributary that comes in like, somewhere here or something like that. Because I think, well, no, the bottom one, undo. I have the bottom river being more significant, so it's going to be a lot bigger. So I think there'd be a higher chance that there's a more major-ish tributary coming maybe from that direction, which could be included in the city walls. And if we did that, then we're going to want to tweak these lines here to maybe be more like that. And, have like, maybe there's like a little bit of a pass there, right? And then there's that little like smaller river that goes through there. Tributary between river density would be a bit too high. So you're saying, well, I mean, based off the, like, they're very close to like the cliff, so and there's a lot of rain here. So remember that, like, there's a lot of rain. So I don't think it'd be that unlikely for there to be a smaller river. This wouldn't be like a major one, but like, like you probably wouldn't be sending like tons of boats up and down it, but it should be enough for a source of water, fresh water for the city. Not as their only note here. I'm not talking about their only source of water. This would just be like for them to have maybe created a fortress here originally or something. They would have wanted it to be like on a river. Nice Acropolis. Plenty to safely store food. Surplus from both river areas. Attracts. Yeah, makes sense. They could dig a canal and divert the water into a reservoir for if the city is attacked. That's true. So they probably would have something of that sort where maybe this like tributary, maybe they have some sort of, well, here is my layer. We'll do this. Maybe they do have some sort of, reservoir lake of some sort that fresh water is going through just so they have more of it in the city. And then, although you are right, like maybe we just have there be, I mean, I think either way there's going to be like a little bit of a river coming through here. The smaller tributary could be dammed if the dam could be protected. Yeah, I think that makes sense. which it probably would be to an extent. So let's, where am I again? We'll switch back to purple real quick. Let's put these initial city walls in here. So I think that it would make the most sense. So depending on how steep this side of this little ridge is here, if it couldn't be crossed, then they could use that as part of their, wall and do something like that. But I think likely not the case. I don't think it would be quite that steep. So I think what we'd more so be looking at let's say we have something like that for a city wall, really roughly. The step terraces for farming already collect a lot of rainwater. Yeah, those terraces are not going to be in the city though. Those would be more like other places. I mean, probably still like on this map, but not inside the city. Just because, I mean, they'd probably be right outside the city walls. Plus, groundwater comes in sideways from uphill. People dig wells to get to it. Yeah, true. Okay, so if this is roughly the center of our city, right? Then we want to look at how trade/transport interacts with the settlement. So like how goods and people will move from other key areas. In this case, this is mostly going to be from the river. So, we'll have some form of transport up and down the river. That'll probably be a big one. For roads, let me switch back over to this map. Let me hide that. So if they are here, then there probably is going to be a major road coming down the valley alongside the river, right? Because not everything is going to be on water transport, especially if it has to make it through this pass. So them bringing like maybe animals or livestock into the capital, bringing large loads of grains. They probably would mostly use the river, but there'd probably be a road alongside the river coming up here, probably on both directions to an extent. There'd probably be a major road kind of traveling up through here in general. So I don't know if there'd be a version of it that like kind of like if the road comes here, maybe there's a version that kind of comes up like this and connects. So if that's the case, we could say, let me make this a little bit thicker. Maybe there's a roads like here, crosses this river, maybe comes into the city. And then maybe there's, a road. We'll say it goes on this side of this river into the city. I would make the road divert from the river to reach the city from both sides. Yeah. Looking at medieval Europe, yes, I think that would make sense. And also, like, again, this middle area is going to be a high point. So going through easy city roads is probably going to make the most sense. Which, to keep it more level, the road would probably be like this sort of a shape, potentially, and then also going into the city. So we might have, entrance to the city here, entrance to the city here. Those would probably be the two main, like, external entrances. So these would probably be the biggest ones, right? So we'd have gates here. And then there's going to be, like, smaller gates, right? Like, this isn't the most defensible place in the whole wide world, right? Like, they probably built it like that originally, but they don't have any reason to, like, it's been pretty safe. So what we can probably do is have there just be like a number of smaller gates, whatever. Yeah, something like that. To an extent, there's probably going to be some shape of road going around it outside of the city walls. And then obviously the city itself is going to extend past what we have for the walls there. So the whole like city, might be more like that or something. Probably more like this sort of a shape than anything. Maybe thereabouts. Depending on how wide each river, we are looking at either ferry crossing or a bridge. Bridges are expensive. Yeah, probably. Ferry crossings are more defendable. I think that would make sense. Especially like these are going to be relatively major rivers. So having some form of ferry crossing would probably make sense there for these. Like any of like the smaller rivers, like if it goes over like this thing here, there could be a bridge there and that would be fine. But let's move over to, let's select like a green color and let's start looking at our centers. So first center, right, is going to be our administrative center. So that would again be where this X is. So this is where we're going to have like our palace, which like, maybe that's our palace. Then we're going to have a lot of the bureaucratic bits and bobs, which side should be, we'll say that's going to be in this region. And this might have its own wall as well. Just because, your palace itself is going to have a wall. And then I think the major like bureaucratic area is also going to have a wall that's going to actually be very limited in terms of like, anyone can't come in here. It's not just open to the public. You have to have like special authorities to be in there or have to be in there for some sort of reason. But it is a capital city, so maybe a bridge. Yeah, like we'll get to that when we get there. I'm not too concerned about it yet. Bailey walls. Yeah, that's sort of an idea. Where there's going to be different like tiers of the wall systems. And I don't like, this is not going to be like Moat and Bailey kind of style, or like there's not going to be, a moat or anything like that. I'm not imagining they were that worried about defense even when they initially built it. Like obviously it's going to be somewhat defensible. There's going to be walls. It's going to, be more sturdy, but I think the fortress that was the initial fortress is not going to be one of the main buildings. Like I think it's going to be in there and it might have a little bit more extensive stuff going on. Or maybe that was repopulated to be the temple that gets broken into in my story maybe. But, we'll say maybe there's, I don't know, your fortress in there too, and various buildings of administrative focus, some storehouses, all of that. So then religious center. The religious centers are actually not going to be in here. There's some complicated societal reasons for that, but the major temples themselves would probably be within these city walls, probably nearby, but one of them, it would make sense to be in the center, and one of them, it would make sense to be further out. So we'll say, over here is going to be Church 1, because that's going to be a pretty central spot where people could come in to this big cathedral type thing or whatever it is. But then the other one is a little bit more focused on nature, balance. It wouldn't want to be in, like, it would be against the religion for it to be in the center of society, right? So the main one of those is probably going to be I'm going to say that's going to be here, where it's outside the city walls. There's going to be some more forested areas over here, which we'll get to later. And then there might be like smaller churches and religious centers around, but those are going to be like the centers of the religious power. So then defense military center, typically near administrative center. Again, I think there's going to be a portion of this inside the inner city walls, but then there are also going to be bits just in the general city itself, right? Like smaller satellite spots. So market centers. So market centers, we have to pay attention to roads. And most of the things coming to market are going to be coming from outside of the city. So we're probably going to be looking at maybe market and market. We'll say there's two major markets kind of coming in from each of those trade roads. Maybe they specialize in slightly different goods. So then production center, and this is going to be smaller stuff, but like your high scale production is probably going to be like, to an extent, there might be some like in these regions, right? And then like, you know, right outside the city walls. Production centers, infrastructure centers, yeah, all of that kind of stuff. There'll be major like ports of some variety, like not like ports, but like sort of ports. Down here, which we'll just draw cute little boats, because there'd be something related to river travel out that way. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the idea there. So then if we look at making tiers in the city based on what Brett's article was talking about for the isolated state model, so closest to the city or within the city walls will be the most intensive agriculture, such as horticulture gardens, fruits and veggies, dairying, so some like trough-fed animals like pigs. Within the fancy noble sector, which, you know, I think there'd be a good portion of that in here, you know, kind of in these areas where the nobles are. They're not necessarily going to be all separated like that, but like, you know, that kind of vibe. I think within their compounds, they would have some level of this, right? Just for their own people. But then I think most of it for general populations is going to be outside the city. So let's say kind of this first ring, right? Around here. A lot of this is going to be horticulture / trough animals. So like there'll be some of that filtered in there. And then the next one is going to be forest. So this is going to be firewood production if wood is important for heating. And for this society, wood is going to be important for heating. This is sort of like a boriculture. So we're going to have some not natural, but maintained forests. Probably like, you know, imagine some of that in some various areas. There might be like a little bit out there. And then I imagine there's going to be a little bit of more natural forests over here relating to that church and the lands that church owns and maintains. And then the next is going to be farming and then pastoralism. So we will probably see some like terrace farms up in here where it's a little bit more steep. We'll probably see some like out over here. You know, and then the pastoralism is probably going to be further out. It's not going to be visible here at all, because it's going to be too far off. Shouldn't there be more stuff in the area west of the city where the terrain is more flat? So I don't think the terrain is necessarily flat over here, right? Because like, well, maybe where's we'll do purple. Maybe like in this area there would be. So I think there's going to be a lot of like residential stuff there, but in terms of like transportation, your main roads are going to be coming in from, up, can you see this? Up in here, up in here. Like this is going to be the main power center. So the further you are from these main roads, this main center of power, the less like important you're going to be to an extent. So like this might be where you have like residential areas or smaller areas of the city that are less like, I don't want to say less important, right? But this is where, I don't know, less central parts of the city, maybe your slums, something like that might be further out in that direction. But this is still going to be like, there's still like a ridge along here, right? So this spot here is going to be a little bit harder to cross. Not significantly, like I guess right around through here might be easier. So like, yeah, you'll probably have some centers over in this region, but it's a little bit further from the like center. So like maybe this will be maybe like let's think. I don't know. It could be the slums. It could be just like a separate center. Like maybe that's more of like an entertainment center. Or maybe there's like gaming facilities or like other things there that are like that could be a radial point of part of the city, but it's not going to be the main power point of the city. I don't have any book covers, so I don't know. I'm not a published I'm technically not a published writer, so we're not gonna, I don't know. It's the slums. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay. So this gives us a rough idea of that. Was there anything else I wanted to look at there? No, I don't think so. Okay. So we have our city. So now I need to decide if this scale is what I want. If I normally like to large things of size 9. I think this will work. Okay. So what we're going to do now is, wow, I keep totally messing that up. Okay. Okay. So we are going to structure this Photoshop thing a little bit differently now. So let's set up a folder, and this is going to be for, I almost wrote mapping, like mind mapping, but that's not super duper helpful. Okay, so brainstorming. We're going to move everything that we've already done under here. Because in theory, at the end, all of that's going to go away. Probably hide that. Yeah. So then let me take the opacity of this and drop it down a good bit so that we can still see it. And then I want to create a new folder, and this is going to be our base map. I'm going to start by making a key/distance, and we will want to, come on, struggle moving this around a lot. Okay. I want to have probably in this lower corner because I think it's going to be less of a major type of thing here. So let me look up map. Well, I think we'll probably want it to have maybe 5 miles and 1 mile. So we'll just kind of see 382.8 pixels per mile. So if we have it extend to like here, something like that, and then 382. So this is 7,000. So 1, 2, 3, 50. 52 is like somewhere in here. So that is going to be 1 mile. But then if we want it to be 5 miles, 382.8 times 5. That might be a bit big. Well, no, maybe not. 1,914. We're looking at 5,080. 186. Approximately right there would be the 5 mile mark, which this is awful. This is like, I'll make it look pretty later. That's 5 miles. Just to kind of get a rough idea. Can't you insert rectangular objects of set lengths? You know, that would be a really great idea if you know how Photoshop works and actually use it properly, which, let's see if we can figure out how to do that. Does this tell me? Oh, it does. Oh my gosh, you're right. Okay. What are we at? 382. Go 383. This is so hard. There's probably some super easy way to do this and you're all just laughing at me. Oh, yeah, we'll just do, oh gosh, 383 pixels. Stroke black. Let's make this like 15 pixels maybe. Yeah, drop the rectangle, edit the dimensions. Yeah. Yep. That's, look at me learning things. So I'm just going to erase all of this. And we're going to move our rectangle. Figure out how to do that. No. Just the rectangle. I'm sorry. I'm so bad at this. There we go. So move it here. Duplicate. Sorry, this is why I always just draw everything, because I'm so bad at everything that has to do with this. Okay. It's not letting me do that. We'll duplicate it again. Whatever. Move this one down. Ah. Yeah, I tried copy paste. It didn't do anything. I don't know why. Didn't work for me, but it's okay. We will continue with this. Okay. There. Oh, 2 at a time, then 4 at a time. Yeah, that would be smart. Okay. Yeah. So I think we should fill in one of these with black. And then shift. And I think we can merge the shapes. Oh, select them all and align center horizontally and vertically. Wait a second. Nope. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. Okay, we won't do that because I don't know how to do that. So let's alternating fill. That is a good idea. Let's black, black. Very, very fancy. Okay, and now we will merge these shapes. Oh no, not a good idea. Where's the... We'll just, it's fine. It's fine. We'll just leave it like that. And then key/distance. We will just go in and add, come on. It's fighting with me. Okay. We're just going to add some like general text real quick. Scale. Oh boy. Apparently the tool I was looking for aligning them is in the toolbar. The upper next to the transform control. I'm sure we will come back to that for the alignment of the rectangles. Because you're right, they aren't entire. Actually, okay, you're right. Now that you pointed it out to me, I've looked at the alignment and they're wrong, and now we're going to try and fix them again. So if I select all of these, where's my shift button? Those guys. Okay. Next to the transform tool. What is this transform tool? I really am showing my not knowing what I'm doing here. Oh, next to the transform tool. I don't know. Shape properties? I don't see it. Am I just blind? Oh, not this. Not this. Over here? We're just going to be lazy about it, I think. They are now all aligned. At least well enough that I can't tell any better. Okay, so we're going to go with that. We gotta call it somewhere. So let's go back to drawing. Oh, you put them on different layers. Yeah, they're on different layers. I tried to merge them onto one layer, and then they all turned black. I think it's fine. I think it's fine for now. Welcome, Aaron. Okay. So this is one, okay, they're not quite the same, but we're just going to go with it. That's 1 mile. And then we'll do this at some point, but I guess what I would probably have is like another box that's this big, that's 5 miles. Whatever. We'll fix that later. We'll come back to it. So let's pull in our rivers a little bit better. I'm going to go up here. We'll call this, sorry, that moves around every time I switch from like typing to having my screen down, but we'll call this rivers. We're going to pull that out of the base map. And we'll add city walls. And we'll start there. Okay, pulling it down again. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me, everybody. Let's do our rivers. Let's make them like that kind of color. We'll just, you know, go in here. I think this one needs to be pretty big. Yeah, so we'll go there. Come up here. Do that. Actually, let me undo that top bit. And we'll make that one a little smaller because it's less of a major river. And we'll come off of it here. And then we'll go even smaller. And we will go in like that. That is an even smaller one. And in theory, like there would probably, like, again, this is a very tropical, rainy area. So there probably are going to be even more little rivers in here. Which, like, we can add a little one here. Like, just little small, like, you can even maybe, like, little stream level type things, right? Like, that's going to be, like, a thing that we're going to have. So we'll do that. And then we'll do... Yeah, I think that'll work for now. Because everything else would probably be predominantly, like, changed. Contour lines, the usual color is brown. It would also be nice to have some sort of reference, like 500 feet, 600 feet, etc. On Google Maps, they're every 20 or 40 feet if Imperial's used. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to keep the... I don't know if I'm going to keep it on the map. Those are mostly just like a reference right now. I might keep the contour lines. I might not. If we add them in, I'll do something fancy like that and figure out exactly what they are in terms of the feet. I need to do more maths and calculate it out, so we'll leave that for later. Oh, you're making maps. I often make atlas maps on my Insta page. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's nice. You found a solution to merge your scale. Well, let me know. Let me know in the comments and maybe we'll go back to that. Aaron GeoArt, by the way. We'll have to check that out. If people want to go check that out, please feel free. I'll add it to my list for later. Need to start probably a long list because there's a lot of things I need to look up probably between streams. But okay. So we have our rough rivers, which we'll leave for now. So let's look at city walls. And right now, I think what we'll do, let me look up, and this is in the Oh, I didn't finish my coffee. Okay. I have some links at the bottom of the city planning notes, which is in the top of the chat. I probably should figure out how to pin things in the chat, if anyone needs that. But I like how that's done. One of the first maps linked is a map of the Chang'an city in the Tang Dynasty, which is mostly just showing like a city. It's a grid layout. There's the markets, the various palaces. And I like how they do the gates and the walls. So for now, we're going to copy that. I think at some point I would make like this is going to be more of a functional map that I'm going to use for like referencing layouts and everything. It's not going to be meant to be gorgeous. If I wanted to make a gorgeous map, what I would probably do is do something that's not from a fully aerial perspective. It would be sort of like from the side, and you'd be able to see like a bit of the topography and have the videos be or the buildings be a little bit more 3D. Let's see. I use city skylines, and you just reminded me to drink what's left of my cold cup of tea. You're welcome. Drink the tea. Okay. So we're going to start with, I don't think, well, actually, that's an interesting idea. Having straight lines versus curved lines. And I know there's a lot of different like map styles for fortresses, but again, this isn't overly defensible. And it's only going to be part of it, like, let me see. From my rough mental map, the city wall would be around 10 to 15 miles. That is a huge wall by European standards. Yeah. So I will say, in terms of like a comparison, the way this society developed is a little bit less European and a little bit more of, maybe like the societies that developed in like the Middle East and India and China, where they were. We're not going to get into it. We're not going to get into it too much, but one of the things I've been researching lately on the development of, do I actually have it in here with me right now? I think it's Organizing Bronze Age Societies. Give me one sec. Okay. Okay. I've been reading Organizing Bronze Age Societies, as well as a couple of other map books, which the main one I can't find. I don't think it's in here. But basically, there's like a difference in how the societies that were in Europe specifically, like, what you think of when you think of like medieval times versus other societies developed. And we actually had very little bureaucracy in the long term, right? Like it was very like more democratic council based for a long time, and didn't get like super intensive agriculture until a lot later than like some of the other places did. So I've been kind of trying to lean it a little bit more towards how developed the cities would have been, and how much time the bureaucracy would have had to form and stabilize and develop, more based off like, cultures in and around China, how they developed. So I think long story is, I think having a super intensive wall and like that sort of thing wouldn't necessarily be that crazy, just because I think it makes sense. That's a long story. Yes. So, although we could kind of tie more of it into that high point, but let's think. So this inner purple was going to be the main city wall, which I do think makes sense here. So the inner fortress is going to be all the way up on that hill with the palace. Let me just start kind of mapping this out a little bit, I think. Oh, that's way too big. Let's go with like 15 seems a little bit better. Yeah, so plus next time you use rectangles, use shift to move it evenly. Ooh, smart. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna go back to that. We'll convert it to a smart object and we'll get all that looking fancy once we need a break from some of the stuff over here. We're gonna go with, let's go. We'll go with that. And then our main gates. So we have the big one that's going to be like here. That'll be a gate. We'll have a major gate here. Then we'll have maybe a smaller kind of gate here. And then I think it would make sense to have one like here. And maybe actually more like here. So those will be the main gates. And then just to make it clear that this is a city wall, I like how they have the little like, I like the way that kind of looks. Again, I know there's probably like fancy Photoshop ways to do this, but yeah. And we can always go through and add more gates if we think that we need them based off the way the city's developing. I'm not too worried about that yet. While I'm just like slowly getting into some of this more tedious bits, I'm curious if anyone else is working on any maps, and if so, what you're working on. Over here. Ooh, Liara is working on the capital map of their ancient desert civilization. That is cool. I really do like city maps around deserts. Not just like from a like aesthetic kind of situation, like they're kind of interesting. They're less what you see in all of the like medieval Europe kind of stuff, but like they just function differently, like with the way like agriculture is there and like the density of that and how like a lot of the ones you see tend to be very like trade focused or focused on resources, and like the way they build up around those just I find so cool, like the way they're structured. I'm working on a map of 2 provinces, modern era, very early stages. Nice. Modern maps scare me a little bit. Reading a novel in Kindle. Oh, that's exciting. So I have design and writer's block. That's fair. Honestly, like when I had both of my kids, like the weeks beforehand, like you're so amped up in anticipation for everything that it's like hard to do anything. When I had my daughter, I think I worked on a quilt. And I was quilting like through all of my early labor, just like, I can do this, just going in straight lines, like, just that I had something to do with my hands, but it was rough. Good luck with all of that, and hoping for a very, very safe and easy, delivery for everyone. Contemporary setting across suburbs between two CBD areas for a series. Oh, very cool. Very cool. I'll show you. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm having a baby girl as a firstborn. Oh, congratulations. That's exciting. My first was my son, and then my daughter was second. It's always, a crazy time, but it's great. In the process to do the same process you did, zooming from universe to city, but it is daunting, especially how detailed to be in the former levels so as not to create a contradiction. Yeah, that definitely is something to be worried about, which the world that I'm creating, like, I'm hoping that I can use it for a lot of stories and a lot of different times. So, like, I don't want to get too specific in areas other than where I'm telling this specific story, just so that I have more flexibility down the road. But you can always change stuff. I published the coastline and some islands on Discord a few days ago. Nice. Yeah, I'll have to. I think I saw those. I think I saw those. That's exciting. All the maps. All the maps. Yes, let's keep up going with this for a minute. I think that I'm definitely going to have to make a smaller scale map for some of the specific settings. So, like, the temple and the academy, like, I'll probably do like layouts for those specific buildings at some point. You have Discord, Madeline. Yes, I have a world building Discord that I kind of every now and then in videos I mention. Yes, I don't want it to be overly public, just because I don't want like a ton of random people to be in it. So I try to place mentions of it where I think that like super hardcore world builders would be paying attention. So, like, at the end of some of my world building videos, on a stream like this, that sort of thing. But if you are interested in joining, it's mostly like people talk about the world building. You can go to my website and go to the contact me and just be like, hey, I want a Discord link, and I'll send you the Discord link. That's kind of how I do it. I'm working on a vampire lair map for my D&D campaign. Oh, that's cool. Ooh, that is very cool. As someone who can use Photoshop, I can help you too. Very nice. I am sure that I will need lots of advice as we go through this. I haven't done a lot of, like, this is the first time I've done any live mapping. I've done like live conlanging, and it's been really helpful having advice from people. And at some point, I really should do some like live, like full world mapping, because the way I do it is so inefficient and it takes me so long because I hand draw everything. Like, I know there's like fancy things like making like masking layers, and I don't even know what the words are. Like, there's some fancy stuff that I don't know how to do literally any of it, but that's fine. What? Sorry, I'm just getting tons of random messages and emails, but none of it's important. I use Inkscape to make maps. Oh, that's cool. Is that one that I've looked at? Inkscape. I know I've looked at like Incarnate and stuff like that. Is Inkscape just like sort of like Illustrator? Where it's like a vector drawing kind of thing? Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense to do. You're doing amazing. Thank you. I try my best. You can definitely tell that I come from like hand drawing everything, and that I haven't like, I'm slowly adapting. The layers is nice. I do really, really like having the layers, especially for mapping. Yes. Okay. So yeah. So like Illustrator, I need to get into that at some point. This will probably horrify any of you that have any technical graphic artistry type skills at all, but for my team at work, I actually make everyone little like avatars for all of our little like sites that we use, and I make them in Photoshop by layering all the shapes, and I make very complex avatars out of like 300 individual little shapes. And if I used an actual tool that had literally any level of like being good, it'd be way less crazy. But I literally just make like Photoshop art out of shapes. It's probably horrifying. It's a lot to learn. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a lot to learn. And I think because I have ADHD, it's hard for me to remember the complex processes for a lot of different tools and software. So like I've learned a lot of the stuff once and used it once when I researched it, but then I just don't remember it if I'm not doing it frequently, which is, the problem. Inkscape keeps track of points instead of pixels with interpolation between, e.g. a curve never gets pixely, though I use Krita. Yeah, I've heard some good stuff about those. It's something I should probably look into at some point, but again, it's like a whole nother tool, and I barely learned this one. I don't know. I'll try it at some point, but okay. So we have our outer city wall. So then I think for the inner city wall, it's not going to be like a full wall. I think there'll be, because it's kind of butting up against the back of it. Although maybe the palace would have a full city wall. So let's say, I'm trying to think how that would work. Let me, I have some other links of just various historical city maps. I'm just going to pull up some of those real quick and just scroll through them. So if you have the link to the notes I'm working through, it's at the bottom. Even when it's on a hill. Yeah, I think it normally is a full, in a lot of cases, it's still a full wall. It just, Okay. Yeah, and we're getting votes from the chat for full wall. We'll go full wall. Full wall it is. So let's do... Yeah, the mountain hill may not be enough. It would provide easy access. Yeah, you wouldn't ever want anyone to get above you, right? So like that most defensible spot probably would be at like the tippy top of that ridge or like that hill. Because like I don't need this to be like a super like rocky hill or something. And like it's not gonna be that crazy. So I think that, yeah, let's put like our central palace right on where the top will be. So let's say that's gonna be like, we want it to be like relatively big. We'll say, I'm going to say that whole thing is going to be like the inner palace, which there's going to be like a lot of people living in there, but we'll kind of say that's kind of what we're looking at. And we'll want one gate there and maybe one side gate there. So let's add our little lines here. And I kind of imagine this like back part here being the highest. Well, no, in here would be the highest. But I imagine, would I want a gate in the back? I'm going to say no. So the next question is, do I want this little inner bureaucratic center to encompass that other wall or kind of just butt up to it? I sort of lean towards just butt up to it. That's a huge part of the city. That might actually be way too big. Because if the city is like this pink area, well, actually no, if the whole city's like the city's main city is this pink ring, then that inner palace wall is probably not that absolutely bonkers. Um, we're gonna do this part's gonna be like a little bit more structured. Um, okay, what are the funerary/burial arrangements in the city? Um, I don't know yet. I There's nothing immediately that comes to mind in my culture or society right now that would kind of dictate which way it would go. So I'll have to do some brainstorming on that and add that to the map because that is something to keep in mind. I think everything you made on the channel looks great and lets imagination take over. Thank you. When it's manual and a bit coarse, you're always in control and can change it. Some of the fancier ones, it doesn't feel like your choice and you're a bit stuck with them. Yeah, I like having that direct touch on everything because, like, it helps me understand what I'm doing and work through what I'm doing. Like, I think there are more tools that I could use to make the process a little bit easier, but like, I still want to keep that focus on like it being more manual, like you said. That palace wall is roughly 1 mile by 0.7 miles. Ooh. Okay. As a comparison, let's look up. Um, uh, see. Ooh, what's that? It's not going to be this big, but ooh, what is that palace called? Hmm. No, that's not what I want. Where is? I'm find an example. Okay, so as a comparison, the Forbidden City or the Imperial Palace in Beijing, China, is 720,000 square meters or 178 acres in size. So that's the biggest palace complex and one of the most complete ancient building complexes. So 100 square meters. Of course, it's how many acres is? So 1 square mile, which this wouldn't quite be, is about 640 acres. And the Imperial Palace is 178 acres. So maybe it's a wee bit big. So let's make it a little smaller. Because if it's even bigger than the Forbidden City, and I don't plan on it, like maybe the whole thing could be that big, but like there's no reason for it to be that big. So that's a helpful point. We're gonna make it smaller. Have you seen the video of Shadiversity about the layout of realistic European cities? I have not. Oh, of castles. I have not. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Yeah, yeah. I'll have to look into all that stuff. But I have watched. Oh, who is it? There's a someone who studies like German, early German society who was playing. Was it Manor Lords? Who talks about like village structures and like building them up like that, and he talks about like the Wunderling and the Rundling and all that stuff. I'll have to look for that later. But I've watched a lot of that, and I have a lot of like, I don't know. I really like castles. I have a lot of books on castle layouts. I have a lot of books on like, um, where are they actually? So these are a lot of the books that I use for stuff. So like this book covers a lot of like medieval Russian fortresses, Crusader castles, tectonic knights, uh, Indian castles, the rise and fall of the Delhi Sultanate, Japanese fortifications, Japanese castles. Like I have a lot of these books that I look at for information and just for like examples because they'll have like some really cool maps. Like let me find a cool one to show you. So there's like how they organize it and with the flow of where's the big one? That's on the castle keep. That's less wide scale. Let me go to this one. Yeah, but it'll have like cool maps and stuff like that. I don't know. I like these. I'm trying not to like use these too much as a reference right now because we're like streaming it and like I don't know. This is like paid for stuff that I don't have the right to just be showing everything. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we have decided that my palace complex is excessively large, probably 4 times larger than it needs to be. So we will use that to make it smaller. So let's just straight up do like that. So we'll do that. And then, oh, that's not what I want. Let's change this. See, how big is this now? Doop. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be our palace. So then we still need all the like various bureaucratic stuff, centers of this map. So I think what we're going to want to do, erase some of this. I think we'll want to focus this a little bit more and make it a little bit smaller, but not too much smaller. I need to bow out for a bit. I'll be back on a later stream. Sounds great. Yeah, this whole thing is like I'm going to be going the whole time, but I'm expecting people to pop in and out, only show up for little parts of it of whatever they're working on, which all works. But yes, we'll go like here, here, and let's make this. Let's do. Now this is still huge, but this is going to be. There's a very, very large bureaucracy. So there's still going to be, a lot in here. So I think it's fine that it's so large. Since the city is on an elevation, the southern side gets most of the sunshine and none of the smoke from heating and burning if southwest wind is dominant. Oh, that makes sense. So that makes sense. Yeah. So let's do a gate here. Let's do, because this is, while this is like restricted areas for certain people, I think there still will be a number of entrances because this is again like kind of the bureaucratic center here. Okay. So now we have this, which I think is pretty good for the walls. There will probably be some smaller wall structures, which we'll do later. But these are going to be the main walls, right? So let's add a layer. And this is going to be, I think, the most drafty of all of the ones we've done so far. This is going to be draft roads. Because again, once we actually start building in specific buildings, we'll want to come back to that. All right. So let's make roads. I feel like a gray color would be good. Just so that they're a little bit less like dominant. Or honestly, depending on what type of map we did. Why is this not working? We could do like them like a tan or like a light gray color if we're gonna actually color in everything. The bureaucratic center I'm estimating at 1 mile by 1 mile or 640 acres if my imperial math is correct. Yeah, I think that makes sense because the one before was about, I think you'd said 1 mile by 0.7 miles, and we slightly more than quartered it. So I think that makes sense, which I think is reasonable for like the bureaucratic center of it. I think like it's definitely big, right? Like we have to remember that this is going to be like a very big area, but you know, I use red roads. Yeah, I feel like red would work. Looking at a lot of the historical maps, I think I'm gonna go for like a tan color, but that sort of works better if you have like a base background color, like a green. So actually, what we're gonna do, okay, let me move this around. It's gonna shift. There we go. Let's add a background color to start. Whoa, I can spell. Move this down here. And let's choose, I don't want to choose something super like intense. So let's go with like, see what this looks like. I think that's too dark. I feel like that's a, well, yeah, let's do that. I think that works. Block that real quick. Okay, back up to our draft roads. And then, well, yeah, I want the roads to be like a tan color. So let's do like this color, maybe. Yeah, like let's keep green for forest and nature. This will be the forest and nature color, but I'm gonna kind of carve out of it. I just need something to contrast, which like maybe actually, let me. Okay. Let's make a quick key. This will not stay the key, but I just want a place to like put these roads. Wow. And let's actually go and for the background color, instead of doing this, let's make it a little bit more gray toned. Maybe you can still have a hint of green. Oh, I locked it. There we go. I think that works a little bit better. Yeah, it is a tropical area. So there's going to be lots and lots of trees. But yeah, let's go with this. I think that will work and still let the roads be pretty easy to see. It's kind of like a gray. So copy this. Also, okay, wait. It's 10:35. My next stream starts at 11 in 30 minutes. So I may actually stop this stream here. So I have 30 minutes to go check in with my family, make sure they're good. I'm getting kind of hungry. Fill up my water, maybe get some more coffee, all of that. So let me save this. And we will return in 30 minutes at 11 o'clock for the next stream, which all the playlists and everything should be linked. Yes, I will see you all in 30 minutes, and we will start back up with roads and building out our city. So 30 minutes. Okay, bye.